All right, so I get asked this question all the time. Should I buy or should I rent the property that I live in? And the answers that you can find to this question on YouTube and other sources naturally are going to be completely different depending on a cocktail of varying factors. But generally, these are going to compare a person buying a property versus renting something relatively similar. And generally, I find these to be somewhat incomplete and leave out some important elements. The main problem with these scenarios is that comparisons between rent values and property price points can vary a ton depending on where you're looking to actually buy, right? The area that you're in. So these scenarios are often highly subjective to a given area and also take a bunch of assumptions into account, making these not really applicable to everyone watching. But as a general common theme here, the idea is that a renter wouldn't, of course, take advantage of what makes real estate attractive in the first place, being leverage, appreciation, mortgage paydown, as well as tax advantages. So a renter would have to theoretically be able to put themselves in a situation where they're able to save more on a monthly basis by renting over owning, and then also have the discipline over several decades to invest those extra savings into a stock market portfolio. Now, I've personally been a renter several times. I've owned many properties and I've dealt with dozens of tenants over the years. So I can confidently say that the answer to the question, should I buy or should I rent, is that it depends on a lot of things. So instead of just giving one example of a comparison in this video and then making a claim as to one being better than the other, I fully understand the complexities of the situation at hand and all the variables that come into play. So that's why I've taken the time to create a downloadable spreadsheet that you can access completely for free down below in the description of this video, and input personal information relative to your finances as well as the market that you're looking to buy in or rent in, making the outcome therefore highly personal to your own given situation. By the way, my name's Griffin. I really hope you enjoyed today's video. If you do, please take a second to drop a like. It really helps the channel out. And if you think I've made any mistakes or assumptions myself, feel free to comment them down below the video. Hey, and quickly here also, if you want to learn more about real estate investing and how you can actually build wealth yourself through this asset class, make sure to check out the link down below in the description of the video to my Udemy real estate investing course that seems to always be on sale. Udemy's running sales constantly on it, so you can scoop it up for a really good price. All right, so of course, if we're going to tackle the renting versus buying debate, we need to compare similar properties in the area that you're looking to purchase in the first place, and also compare housing options that are realistic in the context of a first-time home buyer, which if you're watching this video is most likely the case for you. Right, if you're seriously debating this issue for yourself, then you're most likely going to be first purchasing a starter home and then also making some lifestyle adjustments, moving out of downtown living where you're paying maybe 3 times average market rents and average market values for properties. So to do this and compare similar options, let's actually jump onto the MLS and we'll pull up a 3-bedroom house in my area and then also pull up a similar 3-bedroom house that is in that exact same area, but that is a rental. This will make for a viable comparison. And obviously, sure, yes, this is in my own area, but whether or not you're in Orlando, Houston, Toronto, or Edmonton, you can conduct this exact same exercise and use a spreadsheet that I made to compare similar properties in your given price range, while also inputting region-specific data to make a more informed decision for yourself. Okay, so this here is a row house that I found in Ottawa, Ontario that's selling for $389,900. It has 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and a carport for parking. Now, of course, a townhome would also come with condo style fees associated with it, so that'll all need to be taken into account in our calculations. Similarly, here's a townhouse in that same area of the city that also has 3 bedrooms and 1 bathroom, and it's renting for $2,800 per month. Now, these properties are nearly identical in terms of bedrooms, size of the properties, and so forth, so it's safe to say that these comparisons here are both fair as well as accurate. And I also looked at a bunch of other options, and townhouses to purchase in this area are between $350 and $450 depending on the level of renovations brought to the property, with rents also varying from anywhere from around $2,500 to $3,000 per month depending on the condition as well. All right, now like with any comparison, we first need to go over a handful of assumptions for both the property to be purchased as well as the rental unit. So here are the ones that I'll be making. First of all, I'll be calculating these values over a 15-year period. I think this is fair because no one's going to be raising a family, say, in a 2-bedroom apartment apartment unit. So 3-bedroom unit here minimum for both the property as well as the rental unit, I think is a fair assumption. The second assumption we'll be making is that average inflation will be 4% year over year for rents, costs, etc. Now, of course, you can change these values to the realities of your own market. So let's start with the total cost of renting over that 15-year period. Earlier in the video, we mentioned the fact that rent for a 3-bedroom townhouse like this would be around $2,800, but that's not the only cost that we need to take into account. Many landlords actually require their tenants to have renter's insurance, and I found online that an average here is around $25 per month. Otherwise, a lot of properties will also charge extra for things such as parking, amenities, internet, and most importantly, appliances if the renter doesn't have their own appliances. So we'll assume here an extra $100 per month that is added onto your total rental cost. However, feel free to remove this if that isn't the case for you. This brings the total rental cost to $2,925 per month or $35,100 per year. But let's remember that this is only in year one, because all of these costs will be increasing year over year due to inflation. So even if year one's rental costs are around, say, $35,000, well, year over year, these are going to get more and more expensive, basically indefinitely. And that's one of the main downsides of being a perpetual renter. You're 65 years old, instead of having a paid off house, well, your 28-year-old landlord is hitting you with a new rent increase. So with this in mind, after 15 years of that 4% annual inflation, well, the monthly rental cost would be $5,200 in year 15. For the sake of this example, though, we'll say that the inflation adjusted monthly rental total would be $4,050. Now let's remember that the only real financial benefit to renting versus owning would be to hopefully invest what would otherwise go into the down payment on the property, invest that in the stock market, and also try to save more on a monthly basis by renting versus owning a home, to also, once again, invest that difference each month into the stock market and therefore grow a stock market portfolio long term. So considering the fact that the average down payment for buyers between 22 and 31 years old is 8 to 10%, not actually 20% or more, we'll consider that a 9% down payment in this case on a $390,000 home is $35,100. And there are, of course, other costs associated with closing on a property and with the transaction, notably $1,500 give or take for the notary, as well as roughly $3,000 land transfer taxes on a property of this value, and maybe $1,500 in other miscellaneous fees, bring the total invested to purchase this property out of pocket at the beginning to roughly $41,100. And this is where pro renters would say that that $41,000 could otherwise be invested in the stock market to create additional income for the renter, which is definitely true. So for simplicity's sake, we'll assume that this renter would invest the entirety of those funds into an S&P 500 index fund through an exchange traded fund, which has averaged 9.3% annual returns since 1993. And after 15 years, although this is not an exact science by any means, you could expect to see that $41,100 turn into roughly $156,000, or the equivalent of averaged out monthly returns of $639. Although do keep in mind that this is appreciation and is not liquid returns. Nonetheless, we can take this average monthly income of $639 and subtract that from our inflation adjusted monthly rental costs of $4,050, bring the true monthly cost down to $3,411. And by the way, this equates to roughly $615,000 in rental costs over the course of that 15-year period. And we can take the other similar townhouse and calculate the costs associated with purchasing it, as well as all other running costs over that 15-year period. So we already know that the closing cost would be roughly $41,100 on this $390,000 property, of which $35,100 would be the down payment. All those other costs are basically gone forever. This now leaves us with a mortgage required to purchase the property totaling $365,900, and this also takes into account the mortgage insurance premium that we had to pay to purchase the property because we put less than 20% down, in this case case in the example. And considering the fact that interest rates have gone up significantly over the past 6 months or so at the time of recording this video, they are sitting at an average of roughly 5% for a 5-year fixed mortgage. This would bring the monthly mortgage payment to $2,140. That being said, mortgage rates could very well drop over the coming years once inflation is inevitably under control. At least that's what I think. So I wouldn't necessarily lock in a fixed rate for more than maximum a couple of years right now, because the interest rate has a major impact on your monthly mortgage payment. For context, this exact same purchase, but at a 3% interest rate, would be a payment of only $1,735. That's a big difference. And the reason why I mention this is because in the United States, you can lock in a fixed rate for 15 or 30 years. So if you're locking in a much higher interest rate right now, you could be paying potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars more in interest over the lifetime of your mortgage loan. That's not the case in Canada though, where every 3 to 5 years your mortgage is up for renewal, at which point the interest rate will change and fluctuate based on where interest rates are at in the given moment. And this does complicate an accurate calculation over several decades because we can't predict interest rates in the future. Nonetheless, we'll consider that 5% fixed rate would be over the 15-year period. So we'll consider the fact that the mortgage payment is $2,140, and then we'll add other fees on top of it, such as notably monthly property taxes. For this house, they're $181. Monthly maintenance and condo fees in this particular case, $403, which is pretty high, I will admit, and is one of the downsides of owning a townhouse or a condo. But this does also cover large capital expenses such as, say, a roof, HVAC systems, and other things of that nature that are going to be touching other units in this complex of townhouses, right? So if you were purchasing, say, a single family standalone house, you would also want to look at, say, over 15 years, replacing the roof once. So if that's going to cost around 10 grand, dividing that up over a 15-year period and looking at the monthly cost associated with that. That's something you don't want to forget, because some homeowners can be surprised at how expensive these large capital costs can be. Otherwise, we'd also want to take into account things such as the monthly property insurance, which are $125 for a property such as this one. Unlike with renting though, a portion of that $2,140 monthly mortgage payment actually goes towards paying off the property, and this is what's known as property equity. In this case, that equity represents roughly $912 per month in averaged out equity building over the 15-year period if we consider that the mortgage rate even stays at 5%. And that would represent roughly $164,000 in total equity built, bringing the mortgage balance down to $201,000 after 15 years. This is what's known as the forced savings mechanism of owning property, where you'll be making those payments and building equity without even thinking about it. So in reality, the portion of your monthly mortgage payment that goes towards building equity in the property isn't really a cost associated with owning the property. And so for this reason, that portion can actually be deducted from our total out-of-pocket expenses on a monthly basis to own the property in order to calculate our true monthly cost of ownership. Now, taking this even one step further, down in the United States, homeowners can actually deduct the portion of their mortgage payment that is interest on the loan from their total taxable income on a yearly basis, therefore bringing down their taxable income. And this will represent tens of thousands of dollars depending on your tax bracket. In Canada, of course, that isn't the case. However, we are fully exempt from paying capital gains taxes on any appreciation on our primary residences. And in the United States, that's $250,000 for a single person, or $500,000 if married and filing jointly. So if you're currently in the United States, well, from your mortgage payment that we looked at earlier, $18,000 was interest in year one, and that entire amount can be deducted from your total taxable income. That's huge. I won't add this to our calculation though, because it's just so case by case depending on how much you're making and what tax bracket you're in. But if you are American, definitely take this into account in your calculations. Next up, we need to speak about property appreciation, which over a long enough period of time can represent hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity that homeowners have come to expect, especially when investing in an area that has job and population growth. Now, obviously, we've seen unprecedented appreciation rates from 2020 to 2022, which weren't sustainable, and hence most property values have dropped quite significantly across North America over the past 6 months or so as a result of higher interest rates looking to counter inflation. But over a long enough time horizon, property ownership still remains one of the best hedges against inflation because house prices increase as a result of labor and material costs increasing as well. Nonetheless, the data shows that property values tend to appreciate on average by 3.5% yearly. So after 15 years of holding the property, it would be worth in the waters of $653,000 or a capital gain of $263,000, which, let's remember, is 100% tax-free if you're Canadian and tax-free up to $250,000 if you're in the United States. So although a somewhat futile way of looking at things, this would actually represent roughly $1,461 in appreciation monthly when spread out over that 15-year period. And if you want to be more conservative with this value, feel free to look at, say, a 2% average appreciation level for your calculations. Last but not least, 15 years down the line, when it comes time to actually sell the property, if that ends up being the case, most people are going to be paying a realtor to sell their property, and this comes with a commission, typically speaking between 3 to 6% of the property's sale price. We're going to consider in this example a 4% fee, and which would be $26,120 or $145 when averaged out monthly over 15 years to bring that all back down to a monthly basis. So once all of this is taken into account, our true monthly cost of ownership on an inflation adjusted basis over 15 years would be roughly $904 per month, which you might be thinking makes absolutely no sense at all, but consider that this is the true monthly cost of ownership once you've taken into account the appreciation as well as the equity paydown, which of course you're not able to actually access on a liquid basis, meaning you would have to either sell the property or refinance it to touch those values. But this is still the true cost of ownership on a monthly basis, considering that the monthly cost inflation adjusted for those costs over 15 years is $3,132. Still, all of this is the power of leverage, appreciation, and debt paydown that you can only access if you're a homeowner. To conclude this comparison, let's actually take a look at the numbers. So the renter would have spent a total of roughly $729,000 in rent over 15 years and would have a stock market portfolio value of roughly $156,000 after 15 years, considering that $41,000 initial investment. On the flip side, the owner would have total equity of roughly $429,000 in the home that would be completely tax-free at the moment of sale, and that's after the agent's commission. So I know this sounds insane, but on a month-to-month basis, considering a 15-year hold, the true cost of owning the house is actually $2,507 cheaper than renting the same style property in this area. Of course, if you're able to live in a one-bedroom apartment your entire life, well then you could theoretically save more by renting over owning a house and then investing that difference in the stock market, hopefully building up that portfolio to a much larger value. But for most people, living in a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment simply isn't realistic over a long enough period of time, especially if you're looking to raise a family. So when you move out to renting a property that has more bedrooms, living space, and so forth, the costs significantly increase as well. So back to what I was saying at the beginning of this video, I personally find that a lot of content on the internet comparing buying versus renting scenarios have massive caveats to them. In fact, a fellow YouTuber of mine that's also Canadian is named Steve Antonioni, absolutely fantastic channel, and we talk every once in a while. Well, he made a similar video not too long ago going over a comparison in his hometown of Toronto, but in the example, he compared a $3,000 rental unit to a $1.2 million home. Of course, that's never going to make sense purchasing a $1.2 million home versus if you're able to find something similar for $3,000. So that's where it comes back to being able to apply your own personal criteria criteria, your financial picture, as well as the characteristics of the market that you're looking to buy or rent in. But also realistically, no one who's a first-time homebuyer is ever going to be purchasing a $1.2 million house. That's just not going to happen for 99.5% of the population. And so that's why I personally believe that in 99% of cases, it makes more sense to buy a property, especially in the long term, if you want to start building wealth, because you're making those mortgage payments, you're taking advantage of debt pay down and other benefits as well. However, usually this also comes with some lifestyle cuts in some cases, notably living in a downtown core like Vancouver, Montreal, Toronto specifically, or large American cities like Los Angeles, for example. Going to the outskirts, if you're actually ready to start building wealth, is something that's usually going to be necessary. So in summary, there are tons of variables that will come into play and highly impact a buy versus renting scenario based on where you're living, what you're looking to buy, how much you can expect to return in the stock market depending on what you're investing in, interest rates at the given moment, annual property appreciation levels in the area that you're looking to buy, and more, all of which can impact whether or not one option is better than the other for your given situation. Ultimately though, buying and selling properties come with very high transaction fees, and what made property ownership better in the previous example was the debt paydown as well as appreciation over time, and this really only starts taking shape after several years of property ownership. So if you're not looking to hold on to the property for a minimum of 5 years, this buy versus rent scenario in comparison can often be very similar, often maybe even favoring a rental scenario. And finally, one of the biggest things though is that if you're a perpetual renter, you never get to take advantage of interest rate and real estate market cycles to refinance your property at a much lower interest rate, and typically also take out hundreds of thousands of dollars that you can use as equity in a new deal or other investments, therefore having a compound effect on the value of your total investment portfolio over time. But that's something that can only really be taken into account after several years. And if you want to learn more about all that, I would highly recommend that you check out the other real estate investing content that I have on my channel in my real estate investing playlist. Thanks a lot for watching. I really hope today's video helped you make a more informed decision as to whether or not renting or buying makes more sense for your particular situation. If you did enjoy the video, please take a second, drop a like. It really helps me out. It takes me so much time to make videos such as these. And if you want to learn more about investing in general, make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit the bell button to be notified of new and upcoming content. And also don't forget to check out all of the links down below to resources that I use and recommend, as well as a ton of my own products I've created, such as my full wealth through real estate investing course that you can find over on Udemy. Thanks a lot for watching, and I will see you in the next one.